joke. That was part of my whole skit, but nevertheless. All right, so you had a chance to do this, and unfortunately today we won't get to go into intensive okay, Lord, I hear you. Gotta want to talk to you. It's on YouTube, come domain. I'm good. I don't think we can sell this video. Okay, so we won't get to go into the in-depth nature of this, but I wanted you to at least get a taste and feel. How many of you done something like that before? Okay. Trust me, nothing new under the sun, like Ecclesiastes. You just gave it a new name. That's what you do when you go to graduate school. Your proper attribution. But this idea, I'm sure many of you have done spiritual autobiographies. If you've gone through any kind of process, how did you come to know of your yearning and warm sensation, and when did you first meet and make and know? Well, we can do the same things we can go through the same process or share a similar kind of practice around a number of dynamics or issues or situations in our lives. And so this is just one of them. Anyone like to share real quick, how that made you feel, or what your situation was, if it's not too traumatizing?
I love to stand to speak because I wanted to read my lips. I speak with accent. I come from Africa.
What part? Where on the continent?
Sierra Leone, West Africa.
Familiar with it? Okay. You from Freeport?
From Freetown.
Freetown, I'm sorry, I said Freeport. I don't think I'm in the Bahamas.
You don't want to be there right now.
My fraternity brother's going to kill me. Moses County, he's from Freetown. So go ahead.
Yeah, I was 20 years old when I left Africa to go to Europe. And, well, of course I was expecting, the one thing that comes with the expectations, I was expecting that there will be different continents and different people, different than I was. But when I got to the airport, seeing the people who did not look like me, and a lot of them put me off guard. I'm like, okay, I went to school, of course, I knew that was going to be the case. But I felt like I was really different because I was going to live with that. And the thing that really shocked me was I was expecting, at least when I got to the airport, I would hear English spoken around. But it was all Russian. How am I going to manage here? I wanted to go back home. I felt like
you American?
Yeah. But
That was a Russian joke. Yeah,
the Russian.
We should listen again. Go ahead.
So, one thing about the Russians, they will speak foreign language. They won't speak to anything when they speak language. I don't know if the reason they wanted to say something that they expect you to know that understand. So they will hide the knowledge of that language. So they started to speak Russian and English, and they were more English. So I was like, I was very shocked. That was
And it's
I'm a poor.
So 2020? 2020. And you made a transition.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
We discovered that it's not just otherness as far as race or ethnicity, but the otherness of difference in faith, ideologies, and realized, oh, I'm different than those people because I don't believe that.
Yeah.
So there was differences that way as well.
Okay. In case you didn't hear her, she said that they realized that othering or other could be more than just racial difference, which is important for all of you and all of us in this time and in this space. So often we make and frame things in binaries. And so it's black and white. The world is not black and white. Okay? And one of the things that I want to challenge you and encourage you to be challenged by or to wrestle with is this idea of othering. And so even as you sit here, and I think there was a few questions asking about how do you talk about issues in places that seem to be so similar, same, or like. The first myth that needs to be debunked is that all of us in this room are alike. Or if you're in a room where everybody seemingly looks like you, or is raised near you, carries the same zip code, and everything that's happening in their life or on the other side of their doors internally, or whatever the case may be, is same. No. So there can be not only difference, but there can be something that's not right or righteous happening in your midst. And everything that's not right or righteous is not simply race, premised on race. There's a lot of ways in which people are either feeling or experiencing difference or not communicating or engaging each other. And there may be for reasons and situations that are not simply explained, that you may never know until someone reveals them to you. And yet, that becomes a stereotype. Russians ain't gonna talk to people. Or they hack and eavesdrop on you. That's fact there. I do connect the dots eventually, I'm sorry. Keep it lighthearted, don't get too tough on me now. Okay, don't make me go see great here. Come on, leave it alone.
I know what you're saying. My church is in a community that looks to itself as being very affluent, and they're colorblind to the needs around them because of their affluence. And there's so much of it there, it's difficult to break their understanding of, I have this and nobody else is like that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So you see it, for those of you that may have had multiple appointments over the course of your career, you've seen the diversity or the difference between congregations. And even though they may have been of a particular, they may have self-identified, because that's what this stuff is. So you heard some of the language, and I'm not going to be so arrogant to think that it was borrowed from some of the book, but we talk about social constructs. We talk about this idea that we have organized and developed categories and barriers or divides that, here's the thing, as it relates to you and your space, your corner, your conference, your district, your congregation, you can begin to eradicate injustice, race, all that stuff. You can begin to do that today. By just simply saying, we're not going to allow this barrier to be here. I don't know about you, but I have a tendency to take authority. When the bishop puts their hand out and says that awesome phrase at the end of annual conference, which is my favorite part. His too. Vacation! Woo! Here it is. Anyway, here it is. I believe in that. I believe that we need to take our authority. So I tend to take that stuff outside the church, not just on Sundays for benediction in my responsibility. If I'm driving and I'm on a parking space and there's a cone there, if I feel like I don't want to park there, I just say, I'll take the time authority. Nobody's ever been to the line, you see that little rope thing? I do it all the time at the airport, just ain't nobody here, it's, 1 in the morning. Take time authority. You are practitioners and ordained servants of God who've been endowed with authority. Whatever ain't right or righteous in your church, in your faith community, in your space, on your corner, you don't need a mayor. You ain't got to babysit the bishop or beg the conference staff to do your dang job. It is your job to make sure that whatever ain't right and righteous for kingdom's sake is addressed. You can start taking and deconstructing and dismantling and moving these barriers and these social constructs your darn self. I was in another place with Rudy Rasmus on the cuss. You're not hearing me. race, gender, sexual identity. These are, whether or not Penn State's the best football team or not, these are all social construction. These are all ideas and beliefs or naming and framing that we have aligned and bought ourselves into. And for whatever reason, because of the intimacy, the closeness, or the necessity, or the insecurity, or the ignorance that we possess, instead of getting some understanding, we let it stand. And most of the time, it's for our own benefit. So in a Floyd congregation, I'm not poor. Well, you're not poor in money, but the Bible says. I've pastored affluent people, I miss them.
Keep flowing over our heads.
I saw Aubrey yesterday, you know why. I start telling jokes in my head, I'm sorry. I bet you what people have in abundance in their pockets, they probably are lacking, obviously, in their heart. And if you are a pastor of the pocketbook, then that's why their heart's going to remain empty. Or if you're a pastor of the people, then you deal and you meet the people in their need, in their condition with unconditional love. That's a note-taking point. Meeting needs ministry, definition of ministry that we apply is meeting the needs of people in their condition with unconditional love. There's a condition of depravity or poverty or dysfunctionality or hurt or something in every space, congregation, and disciple that you're making. You've got to decide and choose to minister to that. You've got to acknowledge what's not right or what's not righteous, and the right and righteousness, and I should say, I say it that way so that you have a continuum. Sometimes we look at what's right, what's not in line with the law or the discipline or all these kind of things. So let me tell you something. When you go and you really do the exegesis, you'll understand that Jesus said, I didn't come to destroy the law, I've come to fulfill it. So there is rightness that we have to live into. But righteousness is about the spirit of which, and ministering to the spirit of individuals and living out and aligning ourselves with the Spirit of God. So if God can get over some stuff, or if God is a God, let me say it like this, who's unconditional, why do you and I have so many conditions or constraints, or we construct stuff? So, probably in this experiment, and I'll move on, you identify, and this is a common occurrence, we usually find that some type of othering is experienced or detected at various stages. There are particular chronological moments that we all kind of experience. There's some particular communities of space or space that we can experience these in. So how many of you had something in relationship to school? Probably when you went to school, you realized, hey, there's some other people, there's something different. Some kids bring lunch, some kids don't bring lunch. Some kids rode the bus, some kids didn't ride the bus. Some kids don't live in this community that came over on the bus. So you probably saw that somewhere at a major transition, elementary to middle school to high school, or from high school to university, or maybe as you came out of, or how many of you in the workplace? Okay. How many of you spoke about an encounter or situation that was probably that was within your family structure? You heard a relative say something or act in a particular way, or you saw the generational difference because maybe you are first or second generation and you had generations in your house who were native of another place, and so you saw the fact that you spoke one language in your home and spoke a different language out of home. Anybody here had to be the ambassador, the translator, the representative of your family in community because you were the one who was most fluent in language or most able to navigate the space? And I shouldn't just leave it at that. Maybe have a friend. She became she's a very prolific signer. Matter of fact, she was the signer for Barack Obama at the first inauguration in Chicago when they were in the park. And that's what she does. She does all the world signing. I'm like, really? No, I was like, no, I'm writing books. That was so good. I should have learned the American Sign Language. She became proficient at it because she had to learn for her parents who were deaf, and she translated that into an opportunity. Story is important. People, Brother Don, love to tell their story. We are people of the story. The problem in the church today, and particularly for practitioners like ourselves, is one, we have fallen out of favor and affinity and appetite for our own story. The larger story, or the universal story as we like to speak to, which is our gospel. But then most of us don't spend enough time in and with our own or other story. And if we talk long enough, we'll realize that while my other or my difference may not be a slogan or a hashtag, it matters. And maybe you can do your best work at your corner, in your pulpit, in your circle, in your community by talking about what matters and stop being a chyron and an echoing of whatever squat box or media outlet that you subscribe to. My wife tells me all the time, turn off ESPN. You wait on something. I'm tired of the sports analogies in church. Nobody in my church likes sports. Hardly anybody. But I talk about sports at some point every Sunday. They just sit there like y'all said. Does that make sense? Questions? Questions? So I think I can check off a few. How do you avoid stereotypes? Talk to somebody.
Yep.
Where you have questions, ask. It bugged the heck out of me in school. I used to have hair. I used to have hair, then I passed it. And in college, and at one time I had, believe it or not, I had hair for real. I had the little twists and dreadlock thing. And people being in school in college in 1993. That's when I went. That's not when I graduated. And people always wonder, how do you get your hair like that? And I used to say, that's got it. It used to annoy me. And now, I wrote a book about asking people questions. If you don't know something, ask questions. Rabbi Joshua Heschel says, we worship God through our questions. Abraham Joshua Heschel. It's all right to ask questions. If you don't know any better, then ask. Don't assume, because we know what that does and makes you look like. It's base word. Sound it out. So, we confront and we avoid such things and practices by seeking to hear someone's story and acknowledging where there is difference. And all difference does not necessarily have to be politically opposing. But how we align or how we come into relationship always for people of the cloth and of the faith should align with the word, the witness, and the worship of God. So you cannot worship God and have an issue with somebody else. Isn't that what you say somewhere in your communion litany? Aren't we asked before we partake of this so that we don't cause damnation, not later on, but destruction in the here and now, to repent? And at least in my practice, we say, we live in the spirit of Paul, let us turn to each other and simply say these words: I'm sorry. That's what we're called to do. See, it's not just for sacrament's sake. We do this in church as practice. We do this in faith community, in our tradition, as practice with each other to hold each other accountable so that then we can make it applicable in our lives. I'll do a little quick thing real quick before I go into this next piece. But the second, at least for me, and in my tradition, and Brother Paul, you can probably speak to this, particularly in indigenous culture and in African diaspora, which is like Israel with all of the spread apart. First Nation people. I believe this applies in some Korean culture. I haven't explored it as much. I hope that I will this spring with Dr. Clark and Drew. There is no divide. So when settlers and explorers came, one of the misapprehensions that they operated under was thinking that people in the Americas, the natives, the First Nationers, and when they went to the continent in Africa, they thought they were polytheistic. Oh, they got gods all over the place. They got the god of the buffalo, and they got the god of the tent, and the god of the ram, and the god of the prairie dogs, and they got god of the trees, and god, and no, they call them different names, like Nkulu Nkulu. But the Igbo people had a god, they had a trinity before 1968. And like I tell people all the time, especially people that look like me, when you ask that question, what do they ask? I have to remind them that we were Methodists and God-fearing before 1968. Chi, this personal God, this other God that is in this live space that you live in, and then they Nkulu, the great big God, the God of everything, in the Igbo conversation. There's no divide. If you act differently, or people are trained to act differently when they come from your parking lot across the threshold of your door to enter, and they act this way up here, and what you give them is this is the way that we act and we believe and we live here, and you send them out in the world to go watch Fox or MSNBC or to talk the talk of talking heads and not talk the real talk or the God spell, the good news or the God talk, then that's what creates the divide. All theology has political implications, young man. Because all things of God and the expectations of God have real-time life implications. There's nothing that happens in the spirit that does not show itself or manifest itself in real time. So the God that can feed and save and protect has to be that God that's not only cute and cuddly in prayer and litany, but it needs to be the same God that actually arrives in a bucket with the hyssop that will make not only the soul but the wall clean from the mold. Now I just left you preaching, I'm sorry. No divide, don't become it. This is still too hard. Have we covered the milk situation? Got milk? Talk about their story. Don's going to talk about his son. I bet you can tell me, what catch did he make in the Citrus Bowl? What did he do in the Citrus? You said Citrus Bowl, right?
Citrus Bowl and the Rose Bowl.
How many touchdowns did he catch in each bowl game?
2.
Do you know what the score was when you called? Okay. It's all right. You called 2.
That's all right.
Yeah. But you can do this all day long. We can do this all day long. And this ain't got nothing to do with I'm black, he white. You ask me about my son, I'm going to tell you a whole bunch of stories. Some of them good, some of them bad. But I bet we have something in common about our sons. Is he still around? He's still living?
He's coaching a high school team and one of the top teams in the league.
Is he around here?
Well, he's north.
Okay. You go to games still?
Yeah, I take his stats.
I was going to say, we both will probably do whatever we can, as long as we can, to celebrate love and be with ourselves. And you just prove that. That's the conversation. And newsflash, that's the best way to begin to invite people into your church. Stop telling them to come to church and be saved. Church, don't do that. Like that. Do life together. Have a conversation. Amen? Okay, we got a little bit of time for lunch. I know y'all need it. And then they gave me the thing. And okay, I'm gonna come back and get it. I'm sorry, I see it. So, we're people of the story, and tell me if I'm off center yet, Bishop. But we're people of the story. We have a story, and then we have a universal story. So this is what happens in the book. Believe it or not, this idea of being the change you wish to see, which is a kind of a Gandhi ballroom, is modeled in our tradition. Why did I talk about Gandhi and I also talk about Christ? Because there's some people who probably know more about Gandhi nowadays than they understand about Christ. Newsflash. This ain't the most biblically literate time we live in. And if you're a person who can only talk, Holy Ghost fire, you probably ain't got too many people listening to you. Because the world's on fire and you can't out talk and last the world with your talk. It's got to be a voice in a name that is above. That's another presentation. Bring the noise above the noise. So, empathic models of transformation. We use this phrase in the book called "hold up your corner." That's just a catchy thing. That's just a reminder. I'm sorry, I do CrossFit and do tri-sprints, and so we have to come up with slogans and T-shirts. Everything's a hashtag nowadays. Hold up your corner. All right. We have another metaphor that we employ called an EMT. Now you know about first responders, right? Today is a special day for me and for our country. This is a memorial. I hope I'm not triggering anything with anyone, but today's 9/11. Okay. 6 years ago, we launched our church, our services on September 11th, 2011. Okay. And I didn't think about this when I was doing the book, that things kind of come together. We have a particular understanding for first responders. The situation on 9/11 was very unique. Anyone who has worked as a first responder in that community, more so the firefighters than the police, and this is not an indictment on police, but the firefighters in that situation did something that is extremely unique and almost out of character for them. Now you're probably looking at me like, what are you talking about? They went to go rescue people and save lives. Yes, they did. But if you've ever been on the scene of such an occurrence, like fire or so forth, firefighters move with great purpose and yet are very methodical and intentional as they move. I have seen police officers, they do it all the time where I'm from, they do it all the time where I'm from. They see somebody, they speed up, they run, they get to somewhere, they get out the car, and they many times run into or briskly arrive on a scene of some sort. You ever watch firefighters and EMTs? They make their way with purpose to a place, but they get off and they never run to anything. Thank you. You're okay. I like people talking back. What'd you say, sister?
They assess the situation for safety first.
They assess the situation. They're in constant motion or activity, but they see a fire, rarely do they run into the fire. Immediately. All right? With people that I've spoken with, that I know, 9/11 was a different situation. Not because it wasn't assessed, but it was just so massive of a situation to do assessment in a particular way. And from the usual practice, it looked like what they were doing made sense. Now, there was another action that precipitated that caused a great loss. But this idea that the world needs some people to be willing to respond immediately. And first responders, or EMTs particularly, emergency medical technicians, as we know on the correct, they are trained in a particular way to do some very specific things. First of all, at least where I'm from, before you can be a firefighter, you got to be an EMT. Before you can run fires, you got to be able to do and be certified as an EMT. And their task is to deal with the situation at hand and put you in the best possible light to the point in which they can transition you to the place of help and hope. I don't know a story better in the Bible than the story of the paralytic. These four nondescript individuals see somebody hurt, see a hurt one lying in wait and needing help. And for whatever reason, they are moved and compelled to get this hurt person to a place of help and hope. And newsflash, let me alleviate your stress and burden for the rest of your career. You don't have to save everybody and everything. There's some buildings that you may be in that are on fire, that were already structurally impaired before you got there. There's some people and some situations that are trapped, not purposely, that unfortunately, because of the situation in their location, in life and in mind and in spirit, they are in places that and you can't get to. But wherever you can begin to do something and help. And your job is not to fix it in total. You may be the person who's supposed to transition them to a more equipped, ready, specialized resource, space, or agency to help them get the full help and hope that they need. That's what these brothers did. But they did it by any means necessary. Now, that's just me retelling the story that you already know. But what if I told you that that's what your call requires of you in the role of pastor? Is how do you help people facilitate their faith in light or in the midst of their crisis or their circumstance? And so somehow you've got to begin to not only hear people's stories, but begin to align or at least point them to the larger story that we have. Because that's all we got. And whatever the situation may be in this life, it may not be a one-to-one match, but there is a story that you and I have to begin to help. Because that's the word, that's the witness, the word and the witness of God. That I come to show you the spirit of Jesus Christ of how things can and ought to be. Now I'm going to stop there. Does that make sense? Because I just said a whole bunch and I know we're fading. You're almost at lunch. I'm going to let you go. I know you preach on subjects. And I know you probably try to direct people, in a particular line of living and so forth. But how many of you just simply invite people to just find a story? And you don't have to answer this one, I just want you to know that. Because just like you have a story, I'm going to go out on a limb, Brother Donna, but I bet the parable of the story of the prodigal son, I bet we talked about that. That probably makes sense to you. I know your son never did any thing wrong, said they dropped the pass too. That's not his fault. The quarterback, situation, Penn State is sometimes fluctuates. Not that thing. So let's just say it was his fault. No, okay. It was his fault. Yeah. They still didn't do the passage. Which I'm sure there's something son's little journey where he did something, maybe bumped a car, had an accident, anything.
Not even at home.
Okay.
Three boys.
Yeah, 3 boys. Okay, did any of them have an accident or?
Oh, we've had no accidents.
There you go. Thank you. I'm glad you have multiple. I should have asked more about the story. Oh my God, this stuff really works. I'm sure you have one that didn't go to the Super Bowl. Yeah. But still,
Yes.
I'm just going to drill this home. Story. Conversation is about sharing story. How do you do it in your place? You need to figure that out. There's a bunch of books that you can probably use to start a program or whatever. You can call it a small group. I don't care what you do. I'm not into that stuff. I'm just telling you to apply and use some story and line it up. Now, as a first responder, you need to figure out people's stories or situations and direct them to the spaces of health and hope. Your congregation is not having to be the solver of all the problems. So somebody in here, I'm going to liberate you from with these last 2 points to go on. We'll talk about this in depth on the other side. Some of us in our churches and our communities see the gospel in totality and we try to do everything. I had to learn in ministry over the years that I cannot do everything. And I had to help my congregation realize, or congregations I serve, that you can't do everything. We are not the congregation that needs to have food pantry. Let me tell you why. Because most people in the congregation need food. So first of all, we can't even fill up the food pantry. That's like, eating a rotten ball. Everything's clear as mud. Yes.
When you were talking about your hair, when do we culturally have it a cultural outlet? Steal somebody else's culture. And when do we say, hey, that's really cool, I'd like to borrow that?
Yeah, well, usually when you go on a cruise, and you get on the islands and you got about $8, you go get your hair braided. They like that. They like you to do that because they laugh at you when you get up and walk away. Learn this, know this about behavior. First of all, culture is learned behavior. It's only stealing when you don't give attribution. Like plagiarism. Don't act like you originated and initiated something that you didn't. We need to do that in all things. Give proper attribution. That's really what worship is. That's what I tell my students all the time. That's how I explain plagiarism. I'm like, God created everything. So we celebrate God. That's worship, right? And you didn't have the original idea because you're a first-year seminarian. So you need to footnote everything. Yeah. Every praise is to our God. Every single quotation should have one. Footnotes. So that's the way you avoid it. There's nothing wrong with sharing or mimicking behavior. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. Isn't it what you do as a child? We learn how to speak and become out of the modeling that we have. So here's a little dig. If your church does not look like Kingdom or Christ, what are you modeling? No, that's not you personally. So no, you can't, I don't personally believe that you can, there's anything wrong with emulating. It's when you don't give credit. So that's my problem with Columbus. I found it! Never lost. I found them. We weren't looking for you. And you weren't looking for it. Oh, fake news. Let's go ahead and check that. Another question. I think we got 2 more minutes. Real quick. Or a minute and a half. Does that help? I know I did it in a joking fashion. Or what would?
No, it's fine. It's like my son's in that mode where he wants dreadlocks, and he wants Bantu knots, and he wants
How do you do
KP.
it?
And actually, you know how white guys do it? You don't comb your hair for 6 months. And you may or may not wash it during those 6 months.
Okay. Well.
Well, he just had to comb it out because he wanted me to do the raised braids, the Dutch braids.
Uh-huh.
And when I looked it up, it was all about kid gay. And it's like, okay, so is this appropriation or not?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about story. I went through that. We had to go through a phase with my son, not about dreadlocks. Our kids are in my kind of cultural set. The new thing now is to have your hair looking kind of beaded. You're looking at me like, what are you talking about? You already have hair. Trust me. Help him out later on. And so he went through the same stage of not wanting to comb his hair because, and this is what I say to my kids all the time. I say, when did not combing your hair become a hairstyle? That's basically. And so I'm in the same boat. I finally, their mother and I were not together. You didn't even know that. So we had to have this conversation. You know, we weren't on one accord for a lot of reasons. But we had to have this conversation. And I had come to a place where, you know, that's not a big deal to me. Maybe because I don't see it every day. I took it as a law, as a game. I'll, you know, go to the barbershop. You want to look stupid, in my opinion, but it's fashion. I let him do it, and it's played out. But the point of it is, culture is learned behavior. Now, if we only leave it at the hierarchical level of is this appropriation, am I still in culture, or if we talk parent to parent, what are common denominators in conversation? You got a crazy son, I got a crazy son. Neither one of them are going to grow up and have dreads or beady hair. They're going through a stage. He's probably 16, 17, 15. We need to just be in solidarity. You know, teenage parents unite. And just be like, you know, do like Jesus, you know, like the Lord does. Man, he'll get over it. You know. Don't the Lord leave you to yourself sometime? You ain't gotta fix it. I know it's embarrassing as hell.